From Seoul's beauty streets to shelves across the US, Kbeauty is redefining what the world expects from cosmetics. Do stay with us. Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Press Perspective for this Friday, August 28th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. As Kbeauty moves from a Korean trend to a global beauty benchmark, South Korea is reshaping everything from luxury skincare and medical tourism to consumer habits, distribution and the next wave of innovation. For more on this, I have Kbeauty, the French broadcaster France 24 here in the studio. Kbeauty, welcome back.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I also have Juliana with Bloomberg Opinion over in Hong Kong with us. Juliana, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Great to see you.
Kbeauty, we start here in the studio. I hear you recently covered Seoul Beauty Week. Let's start with that. What was the atmosphere there like?
So it was quite interesting. You know, the Kbeauty weeks and all those kind of festival are always quite happy and festive, obviously. So there was quite a lot of funny games to be able to win samples. So for example, one of them, you just had like to kind of clean sand to be able to find your goods inside. And it's one of the things I think that's really attracting to a lot of people about Kbeauty is how generous it can be in the samples and in being able to try the products, because obviously you never want to get a new product if you are not able to try it before. Sometimes you'll be like, should I take the risk or should I stick to my good old cream that I've been using for the last 5 years? There's also quite a lot of innovation that were shown. That's, I think, the interesting part of this year, where they were really showing off the new stuff. So, for example, new products, new packaging, new colors as well. Like some of the places were really, you could see, like you wanted to take photo of them. That was really, you could see it was designed for social medias, but also the people there. The good thing with this kind of festival is that you're meeting with the people who are creating and selling the brands, so they are more able to talk about the products. And I feel like there was a real want from the participant to be able to discuss with the customers and being able to present new ingredients or new way of putting them and adding them. For example, one of the brand was saying, like, if you want to create your own collagen, actually you should not be drinking collagen, you should be boosting your amino acid production. So they were kind of reshaping the way we're seeing some and the idea we can have on some of the Kbeauty stuff. And that was quite interesting. And then in the audience that was there, so there were quite a lot of foreigners, especially influencers, but I was also impressed. So it was on the weekend, but still a lot of families, Korean families coming. So you would see mom, dad, and the kids all together going around and trying the products. So I don't know for which one it was, but it was funny to see that it can also be kind of a family activity to do.
Right, a family affair then. Juliana, Kbeauty has overtaken French cosmetics to become the top imported beauty category in the US. How do you suppose is it reshaping the global beauty market?
I think in so many different ways. So last year we saw something we hadn't seen before, which is that the US actually overtook China as the biggest importer of Kbeauty. And this is a real watershed moment, because for years, China, until last year, China was the biggest overseas market. And you can see why. You know, China, Korea, geographic, cultural kind of proximity, beauty ideals in many ways are very similar, beauty standards, and even skin tones. So it makes a lot of sense that Korean companies were investing a lot in China over many years. But two things kind of changed. About 10 years ago, due to political issues, Korea's decision to install the THAAD missile defense system angered China. So politically and commercially, kind of ties took a cooler kind of turn. And there were fewer, K-pop stars coming to China to perform. But it wasn't just the political kind of distance between the two countries that affected commercial ties at Kbeauty. Around the same time, Chinese beauty companies started establishing themselves, launching their own products, in many ways cheaper even than Kbeauty. And of course, a lot of things are being sold on the internet, online, and Chinese players know what works on the Chinese internet, on Chinese social media. So I think we've seen this adjustment in China. And on the US side, we're seeing the opposite, which is that Kbeauty is absolutely booming on TikTok, which is, owned by a Chinese, company in Beijing. So doing really well, Kbeauty doing really well on US social media, especially with younger people. My daughter is a huge fan of Kbeauty, which she's only heard about on social media. And you see brands like Laneige, Medicube, Beauty of Joseon, doing really well in the US. And what's really interesting is a lot of these brands do better outside Korea than in Korea. So this is something I learned when I was visiting Seoul on one trip, when the sales associate at Olive Young told me that they only started selling some of these brands because tourists came in looking for it, because these were not brands that were originally kind of targeting Korean customers, even though they were Kbeauty products, because as you know, the domestic market is super competitive. So some of these manufacturers thought, okay, where can we get more business? And they decided to look overseas. And when they became really popular on TikTok, then they started selling it at home. So that's been really interesting to see which brands kind of become popular overseas and, start to gain more of a following back home in Korea. And obviously, what makes them stand out overseas is the gentle formulations, the botanical ingredients, often vegan formulations, and of course, price. Kbeauty products tend to be a lot more affordable in the U.S. than kind of their Western counterparts, and for me, a lot more effective and a lot more user-friendly and much higher quality, right? So good value, good products. Who would not like that?
Right, and speaking about standing out overseas, a UK beauty publication, Chloe, called Kbeauty the new benchmark for Western beauty. How are luxury brands actually using Korean beauty technology?
So first of all, I would say the Western brands in South Korea are nothing new. It's in itself because for example, L'Oreal, that's the French brand, they've been in Korea since 1993. But what's new, what's kind of new is the way they're now using the technologies that are arriving from South Korea and incorporating them into Western products. And so in this article from Cosmetic Business, what they're saying is that, for example, Nivea has a new sun stick where they're showing off that it's Korean technology and it's really branded as Korean technology. Same if Saint Laurent has a new cushion foundation, and the cushion foundation, the type of foundation that you put through a specific type of application is originating from South Korea. I mean, it's nothing new here in Korea, but the fact that it's been exported and shown off as Korean product is kind of the new thing. So I would say there's two things being used. So the technologies themselves, for example, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago that here in Korea, the wands were really the big thing. So electromagnetic wands that would just put on your skin and it would just pulse the product inside, kind of very gently massaging the product inside, or bubbles for a very short expiration date product. So you'll have your cream and inside would be bubbles of vitamin C, for example, that you will just pop up, and so that this way you will have the freshest vitamin C product you could have. So that's the kind of things that will be now more shown off as in coming from Korea rather than just taking it. And then the other thing is also the ingredients. I feel like Centella asiatica, hyaluronic acid, or even niacinamide, or the things that are now flooding the Western markets. And I feel like PDRN is probably the next big one. So, this is the kind of thing when you're living here in Korea and going back overseas, sometimes you will check those ingredients and be like, oh, I know them, but I know they're quite new here. So this is probably the biggest change.
Right. Juliana, you've also written about Korean beauty medical tourism as glow-mads. That's a combination, of course, of the words glow up and nomad, as they travel to South Korea. What makes Korea such a popular beauty destination, if you will?
Oh, absolutely, social media. I think what's interesting is that for years, when people watched K-drama, looked at pop stars with their glowing, flawless complexions, I think people thought, oh, well, if only I use Kbeauty products, I could look like that too. But I think the reality is, and I think you might agree with me, is that the reality is people in Korea don't rely just on skincare. Many people go regularly to dermatological clinics, which are, available everywhere in almost every neighborhood. And the prices tend to be quite reasonable. So people go for lasering, mole removal, brightening treatments, HIFU, Botox, what have you. at really reasonable prices. And I think for a long time, this was not something that people outside Korea knew about. But again, due to social media, people became aware of these procedures. And indeed, we're seeing a huge rise in medical tourism into Korea. And I believe last year it nearly doubled in terms of numbers. I think this is something that's increasingly well known outside the country, especially as the two Kardashian sisters visited last summer. So they are, they've got millions of followers across social media. They were, Instagramming, doing other things, posting throughout their days-long trip. I'm sure they flew, not commercial, on their private jets. And, they showed themselves off getting all these kinds of treatments. We don't know exactly what they got, but they got a lot of treatments. And I think this is just one reason why this industry is becoming better known overseas. But of course, Korea is known not just for beauty treatments. It's known for lots of different kinds of medical treatments. And I think people are getting to know that area as well. And I'm expecting to see much more growth on both sides, both on the beauty and kind of the pure medical side. And I think the country is really preparing for that. And the government is very, very supportive of this.
Right.
And hopefully can accommodate everyone who wants to come visit.
Right. Chloe, another interesting or intriguing, if you will, intriguing trend is the spread of Korea's sun parasol culture to the US. Could you tell us a bit about this?
Yeah, so the sun umbrellas are kind of normal umbrellas, rather you're just taking them out when it's not raining, but when you have a lot of sun. So it's kind of a very common view here in South Korea, or mostly in most of the country in Asia, where people will be using them to block the UV and also obviously to get a bit of colder, because you're under the shade, so you'll be a little bit colder temperatures. And so according to the New York Times, in this article, they were saying that there is a rising numbers of umbrellas in the US. So the reason are multiple. So the first thing will be obviously social medias, always in this kind of event, like the trends are starting there, but also dermatologist recommendations. So more and more people are aware that actually the UV and exposing your skin to the sun is quite dangerous and potentially harmful. So more and more people are thinking about protecting themselves. And the last thing is obviously the rising temperatures, because when you are having such harsh summer in cities that are definitely not ready for that, you are taking every single degrees you can take off yourself. So why not using a sun umbrella? If you can be like 2 degrees cooler, I'm taking it. So the New York Times actually said that there's a research firm that said the global market for these protection umbrellas in the US is expected to reach $2.9 billion by 2034, and it's up from $1.8 billion in 2025. So I mean, it's an impressive numbers actually. It's not just a small trends and funny trend, but it's kind of taking over in the US. That's quite interesting. And then they're also saying like that we have to be still quite cautious, because obviously those sun umbrellas are not completely UV proof, so you still need to use your sun cream when you're going outside with them. But it's better than nothing.
Right, of course. You used them this summer. It was so hot here in Seoul. Have you tried using a sun
No,
parasol?
I was lucky enough to not be in Seoul when it was really hot, but I always try to find the shade, at least.
Right, me too. Juliana, now there's growing global interest in what's next for Kbeauty. Speaking beyond borders, what do you believe is the next big trend, or will become the next big trend?
So I have to say I'm more of a business journalist than a pure beauty journalist. But I think the treatments that are available in Korea itself that are massively popular, both with locals and increasingly tourists, this is something for which there is demand overseas, but different regulatory rules and other things I think might make it difficult for those treatments to travel overseas. For example, regimen shots, right? So I've not had that. I keep wanting to try, but I've heard this is very painful, so I kind of chicken out. But at some point, I would like to, if I don't chicken out. So things like that, I don't think can really travel outside Korea, because it would have to be regulated by, for example, the FDA, because these things are kind of injected by doctors a lot of times. But that said, I think some of the devices, Medicube has a very popular device. Some of these devices, I think, might become more and more popular. I think there's less regulation around them because they're not, strictly speaking, medical products. And on the beauty and skincare side of things, what I would like to see a lot more of from Kbeauty is actually products, hair and scalp products. I think Kbeauty is already fantastic for skincare, but we have skin on our heads as well. And I think that's a very under-addressed market. L'Oreal, for example, I think is starting to acknowledge this segment more. I think I remember one of the executives saying on their most recent call that they are getting into this area more because of GLP-1s, actually. Weight loss medication can change people's hair. And I think this is a market that's ripe for disruption. And I think this is something that Kbeauty can really offer because we have skin on our faces, but we have skin on our heads. And, why do we not care for it in the same way with specialist formulas that target that kind of skin? I mean, this is something I'm looking for myself as well, just to keep, my skin healthy kind of everywhere. And I think this is an area that is ripe for kind of Kbeauty to disrupt. And I think this is an area that it should kind of lean into and develop a lot more.
Right, Chloe, I agree with you as well. Juliana. Chloe, Sephora stores here in the US, they recently introduced the Oliveyong Kbeauty Edit. How important is expanding local distribution so that consumers can discover and buy the latest Kbeauty products?
So I think it's mostly important, as you say, to discover them. Because for now, as a foreigner, if you're in a country where there's not this Oliveyong selection in Sephora's, for example, or can you discover Kbeauties mostly through obviously the Hallyu, so the cultural wave, K-drama, K-pop stars, that also some of brands are introducing themselves in other countries. I know that some brands, for example, Skin 1004 has opened a shop in the US, for example, but not all of them can do that because it's kind of a risky move, obviously, all the time. And so how do you get your products then when, even if you discover some of them, you need to come to Korea or you need to have friends taking a trip to Korea for you? More seriously, products are still being imported in all of those countries, but there's always the problem of you have to go through specific groups and you have a smaller selection, or you go through the Korean brands, but then import fees can be crazy and over the roof. And again, the idea that the Korean products and Kbeauty is kind of not overpriced, then if you go through taxes and customs, then it can double the price of a product very easily. So you have kind of a limited choice, and then cost will make way more competition for those products. So that's why it's important for customers, and it's important also for Kbeauty brands to be able to show themselves and export themselves in a more available way outside of Korea. So we have Sephora and Oliveyong collaboration. There's also Amore Pacific that's been in Europe as well. And so it's good for the customers because they can see more products and discover more products, obviously. And it's also good for the brands making the products themselves because it's hard if they are smaller, if they're not Amore Pacific or if they're not Oliveyong. Obviously, it's harder to know the right regulation, make sure that your products are all branded in every single countries or areas you're going to, figuring out by yourself or to export them, where to sell them. So that's the good thing of being able to have those partnerships. And there's also a thing of the Korean government through the Ministry of Science is also helping those smaller companies with Beauty Play. Actually, it's a specific space where you have the physical here in Seoul where tourists can come and discover those products, but there's also, more importantly, I think, a very legal base and help for those smaller companies to be able to find a way to export overseas. And it's ultimately good for Kbeauty in itself because there's the export for the United States, for example. They've been raising plus 41.5% in 2025 compared to last year, and exportation in total were a record for 2025, and from what we're seeing, it might be another record this year as well. So this is mostly due to the fact that Kbeauty is expanding in a very important way.
Right, and speaking about exports, Juliana, there are pundits who believe that the Trump administration's tariffs could become a new variable for Kbeauty. What are your thoughts?
For sure. It's definitely something that the industry should factor in. I remember last year when it was unclear what the US tariffs on Korea as a whole were, that my Reddit kind of communities kind of blew up. People were buying huge amounts of Kbeauty products because they weren't sure what the tariffs were going to be, and they were hoarding. There were lots of people making massive hauls, massive online or offline hauls, because they weren't sure what was going to happen to the price. Now we know more or less what the tariffs are. It's significant for sure, but given the kind of the price differentials between Korean and American or Western brands, I would say even with the tariff, Korean products still tend to be a lot more affordable, especially if you're buying it online on any of these online sites that send directly from Korea. What I've noticed is that some of these websites have either raised their prices or they've raised their shipping minimums. So definitely they are accounting for this. And I've seen people online say that if they're ordering direct from Korea, then they do need to pay a tariff or a tax, on top of kind of the price that's shown on the website. So for sure, prices have gone up. But, for fans of Kbeauty, this is something that they accept because, they're otherwise not able to get formulas at this price and at this quality, even if the price is going up. And in general, it's still much more competitive than Western or American products. So most people just kind of, absorb this cost. What's interesting is Olive Young has also opened on the West Coast of the US. And I believe they hold their products in the US. So I imagine the products are a lot more expensive than if you, certainly buy in Korea. But if they hold the products in the U.S., then there isn't an obvious extra tariff increase for the consumer. Although I believe most of the time, products I see in Korea, if I see them overseas, not in Hong Kong, but if I see them, in the West and other places, the price is usually more than double anyway. So I think absolutely tariffs are a factor, but I think this is something that Kbeauty lovers are happy to absorb.
Right, and perhaps all the more reason to come here to South Korea to buy them then. Juliana, I'm afraid that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today. Right, and Chloe here in the studio, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Right, from Seoul to the rest of the world, Kbeauty is no longer simply a trend. It's a global force shaping how we think about beauty, innovation, and the future of the industry. That's all from us this week. Have a great weekend. Do join us again, same time next Monday.